50 years.
Well, I have it at 6 o'clock. We do have a quorum present, so if Amy, you can start recording, I'll then start the meeting.
Sarah, you're the host, so it's not letting.
Recording in progress.
All set.
We are set. Thank you all for being here tonight. It is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, December 15th. There is a quorum present, so I would like to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Chittenden Solid Waste District Board of Commissioners. The first item of business on the agenda is the agenda itself. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda as presented?
I do want to, well, under the consent agenda, I do want to pull out the Lindholm resolution and the also Richmond update, drop-off center update.
Okay, thank you, Paul. We'll note that when we get there. I am seeing or hearing no changes to the agenda as presented, so it will stand as presented, and we'll move on to item number 2, public comment period. Are there any members of the public in attendance on the Zoom call or via telephone or perhaps in the CSWD offices who would like to address the board? I am seeing and hearing none, so we'll then be able to move on to item number 3, the consent agenda, which begins on page 3 of the of your meeting packet. We've already heard from Paul Stabler that he would like to pull from the consent agenda the resolution regarding Bert Lindholm, and also, I'm sorry, I don't recall if there, Sarah, if you addressed the Richmond DOC in your executive director report.
Yes.
You're saying yes. We'll pull that out as well from the consent agenda. Any other commissioners wishing to pull something from the consent agenda for to be directly addressed?
And Paul, just to be clear, we're pulling fully item 3.3 and item 3.4.
That is correct. Hearing no other requests to pull something from the consent agenda as presented with the exceptions of item 3.3 and 3.4 are approved as presented. I would like to address item 3.4 first, as you'll see in a minute, just for propriety's sake. I'm happy to read out that resolution. I have it, I think I can pull it up in front of me. So if that's all right, I'll read this off and then we'll open it up for discussion. Chittenden Solid Waste District Resolution. Whereas Bert Lindholm has served on the Board of Commissioners for the Chittenden Solid Waste District for the past 26 years in an outstanding manner. Whereas he has provided dedication and expertise for the Chittenden Solid Waste District. Whereas he has exhibited wisdom, fairness, diligence, balance, and commitment. And whereas he has been a dedicated and conscientious public servant, working continually for the betterment of the community in a nonpartisan manner, therefore be it resolved that the Chittenden Solid Waste District Board of Commissioners, on behalf of the residents and businesses of 18 communities in Chittenden County, hereby convey their sincere appreciation for exemplary leadership and outstanding service. And I would hope that we will adopt this on the 15th day of December 2021 by the full board in attendance of the Chittenden Solid Waste District Board of Commissioners.
South Burlington would like to move this. I move this. I want to go on the record as expressing my deep appreciation to Bert for his service over the years. I've relied on him when I was chair for advice and consultation. I've enjoyed working with him a lot. He's put a lot of time into the district, and I just want to go on the record as really expressing my appreciation and gratitude for all he has done.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have a second for this resolution? Second. I think that was Katie.
Leslie.
Leslie, I'm sorry. Thank you. Would any other commissioners like to speak?
I would.
Thank you, Leslie.
So it was Bert who dragged me into this august organization. He stood up at a town meeting and said he was looking for an alternate. And I foolishly went over and talked to him, and the rest is history. And I will say that he was a great leader to follow, and we all owe him this enormous debt of gratitude. So I'm very much in support of this resolution. I would like to take this opportunity also to introduce our new alternate, Tom Jocelyn, who is attending this meeting as his very first meeting, and I warn him he's now stepped onto a very slippery slope. So thank you for pulling together this resolution and recognizing the many, many hours and dedication that Bert did bring to the district.
And I want to add that Bert is a man of great stature, both for the contributions he made for the board and those of you who know him for his physical stature as well. Also, just to follow up on your introduction of Tom Joslin, who's with us, I'm not going to ask you, Tom, to address the whole board unless you would like to, but Tom has informed me that in addition to now being joining the Board of Commissioners as an alternate, he's also a past board member of the VSECU and is currently a justice of the peace in Jericho. So he is well familiar with boards and process and meetings, and I think well poised to make a great contribution to our board. So, in addition to Leslie's welcome, I would like to welcome you on behalf of the whole board.
Thank you.
And with that, any other discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I trust there are no opposed and no abstentions. The resolution is passed. Thank you very much, Paul, for recognizing him, and Leslie, and for Bert's service. The next item to address on the consent agenda is the executive director update. Paul, do you want to voice your question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I really just wanted to have an update for the whole board on the latest status of our departure from the Richmond Drop-Off Center. What was agreed to in terms of what we're leaving behind and what we're bringing with us, and schedules and stuff like that. So I think Josh has a good summary on that.
Yep, Josh, if you would like to add anything to what I have in my update, if there's anything that has changed or is different. I know we're still working through a couple of the final legal details as far as the formal agreement that I know Thomas has been working with both the town, excuse me, and the in-house attorney for Casella. And it's a fairly simple tri-party agreement that will go to the Richmond Select Board for their adoption. We do have some items that we are selling to the town, some of our assets, and then the town will then sell those in turn to Casella. So those were some of the items that, again, we have been going back and forth on, agreeing to leave behind that they could use to help get them up and running as quickly as possible for the residents in Richmond. From also, Josh, I just want to confirm from what we understand, and this can be confirmed by the town. I don't see Logan on the call, but I believe that the town has agreed to allow residents from outside of Richmond to use the site. So that had been a question, and whether it's just going to be for Richmond residents only, but that is not the case. So other residents from other towns will still be able to use that site when it is back up and running after our departure. Josh, is there other items that you would?
Part of kind of our January decommissioning has us removing our booth, which will require some some crane services. So I'm hoping by the end of this week or early next week, we'll have kind of a decommissioning schedule to get to the town and to get to Casella, just so there's an understanding of, when we'll be there with heavy equipment, we'll make every good faith attempt to stay out of everybody's way and not impact the residents when they're trying to get their services from Casella as they're setting up. So that will be, like I said, hopefully by the end of the week. We just have to one more site visit with the crane company to make sure they understand what we're talking about and where we want things to go.
And Sarah and Josh, if I understood correctly from last week's exec board meeting, there will be a period of time when the drop-off center will not be in operation. Can you just clarify that for the record here?
My estimate is the first week. It is up in the air. I think we're going to meet with the town in Casella to kind of confirm their intent.
Yeah, so
Sarah,
Josh, I don't know if you want to, Mike Casella is on the line, or he's in attendance. I don't know, Mike, if you have any update, or if you're still working through that internally as well. Hopefully it unlocked you, yeah. Or Kim.
It's on mute.
So we have Kim Crosby from Casella and Mike as well. I don't know if either of you are have any details.
If I may, I'll jump in. The town sent a revised draft this afternoon, and in it indicated that Casella would be open during the month of January 2022. So coming up next month. For Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So I would expect that's what the town probably expects from Casella.
Okay, so can I just clarify? So it sounds like there will not be a lapse in service then between the time we cease operation and Casella picks up. Is that correct?
Well, I'm still a little confused about that. So Mike and Kim may have stepped away from their monitors, but the draft that came across this afternoon from the town said that the expectation is that full service will be available no later than the end of March. So I think they're giving, they want to give Casella some time in case there is some reason to not be up and running with full service. But I think, again, we can't really speak for Casella as to how they would intend to meet the requirements of the town if it is truly to have some service throughout January. I would think it would need to be some sort of a fast track, but again, we don't have those details or those plans.
Just as I emphasized last week, I think it's going to be important for staff and Casella and the town to communicate well so that there aren't too many people surprised and upset by a potential lapse of operation there. So that's all I ask.
We'll do our best. So, as we have information, we will certainly direct folks to the frequently asked questions page on Casella's website, where they do have information about the drop-off center at Richmond. So we'll just continue to point there, and as we become aware of new information, we will happily pass that along to any of the. Oh, wait, Mike has unmuted. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I just had a call and stepped out for 2 minutes, and as I stepped out, there was a question. I guess came back to it, so don't know what it was.
No problem. So the question was about the Richmond Drop-Off Center, and do you anticipate there being service in January, or if not, how long the lapse of service may be until you're up?
We are planning on having service in January right out of the gate, so we are going to have not a full collection of items because obviously there's still items that need to be moved off, but we will be collecting trash, recycling, and compost to start. And then once the hut gets removed and some of the other equipment that you have, we'll end up kind of putting back in some of those other services.
Great, perfect, thank you. So it's essentially a fast trash service, at least through January. And then as soon as Mike can get the rest of what they need in place, then that's when the town has said no later than March, the end of March, do we want to make sure that everything is up and running as expected in the contract. So Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure I understood and that we communicate well to our constituents.
I just want to add that Michelle had provided, at least me, and I think some of the surrounding towns, with a message to be posted in our town front porch forums. I would imagine that it's really only the contiguous towns that would get that message. Underhills went out yesterday. It's an excellent message with good links in there. So we're doing our best to keep the public informed.
Yeah, we've already posted it on Jericho's front porch forum.
And from Casella's perspective too, we're going to actually do the same thing. So we're starting our communication plan probably next week, just as we finalize some of the other details. So we'll be doing the same as well, just to make sure that we're all communicating the same thing. And if there's any questions, we definitely want to make it a smooth transition and make sure that the residents are taken care of.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
I think that addresses the question on the executive director's report that Paul had requested. Are there any other questions or comments on Sarah's report? If not, then I entertain a motion to accept the report as presented.
So moved. A second.
Thank you, Leslie and Paul. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the executive director's report? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the executive director's report update is accepted. Thank you very much. We're ready to move on to item number 4 on the agenda, the cost of living adjustment for staff proposed for January 1st, 2022. This begins on page 16 of your meeting packet. I will turn this over to Sarah to begin the conversation. And then
Thank you, Paul. So as you see in the packet, there's a memo that describes the current state of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and accompanying cost of living adjustments. Each year, as part of our budget process, we do recommend a cost of living adjustment to the wages and the salaries. And we have for many years been using the Bureau of Labor Statistics Northeast Urban Class B/C Index for the CPI as our indicator. And we tend to take the end of the year average, and you can see that end of the year average in the chart included in the memo for calendar years 2017 through 2020. And that annual CPI is what we recommend for the COLA. So as I think everyone is aware, this year has been so far unlike any that we've seen in many, many years, several decades. And when we were preparing the budget for this current fiscal year, again, we took the end of calendar year 2020's CPI, which was 1.11%, and factored that in. So when we brought the wages and benefits budget to the Finance Committee, that was what was indicated that we were requesting as staff. By the time we got to the board, as you can see by the chart, the CPI had already started to climb. So by the time the budget was approved and July 1 kicked in the new fiscal year, we were already quite far behind, and it has since continued to grow. So what I'm asking for is, and again, we're looking at ending the year either at 6% or over 6%, quite unprecedented for the past several decades. So what I'm looking to do is to kind of split the difference and to provide a 3% cost of living adjustment starting January 1 for all employees. And this will not bring us to the current 6, but it will get us close or closer. And then when we do present the budget to the Finance Committee, at that point, we can take another look and see if there's another adjustment that would need to be made for going forward. So Tim has posted a comment. I believe Sarah isn't asking for anything believe the board is being informed of the steps that will be taken. So the point of Tim's question does come down to the impact to current year expenses. Because we are already running below budget, there is no financial overage that would need to come before the board for your approval. So we are still falling within our budget. Even with this adjustment, which would be about $46,000, we will still be below budget for the fiscal year. So Tim is correct. There's not necessarily an action or an approval that is needed from the board. It is informational, and I wanted to make sure that you weren't caught by surprise, and that if you had concerns or questions, that we were able to address those here today. Tim.
Yeah, I don't mean to quibble, but you used that word. But what I am asking, obviously it's being recorded, and I just wanted to go ahead and underscore that we're not asking anything. You're informing the board of steps that you intend to take.
Apologies. Yes, you're correct, and thank you. Words are important, so I do appreciate that. So, but yes, at the end of the memo, I do say that I'm recommending that this be implemented. So again, there's not necessarily an action that the board needs to take, but it was because it is a departure from the norm. Like I said, I did not want you to be caught unawares. And if there were concerns, I definitely wanted to hear those and be able to talk through them. So I do want to open this up for questions and feedback and input and comments. And this was presented to the executive board as well.
Board members want to offer or ask questions or offer their opinion on what the proposal is? Tim?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the other board members. I did attend the executive board meeting. I did strongly oppose this move. I don't think it's the right thing to do. And I guess I would extend a question to my fellow board members that we're all living through these interesting times, interesting in many ways, and yet we're seeing some cost increases. I personally am not aware of any of my neighbors or any other companies or any other municipalities who are taking these steps. And I'm just wondering if any other board members had any other examples of any other companies, be they private, public, that are taking these steps.
Alan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I get a Social Security check, and for the first time in a long time, they're talking about a 5.9% increase in Social Security in January. So somebody in Washington has realized the impact that the economy is having on, some folks. So, I mean, I don't remember, Paul, you can correct me, but I don't remember ever having adjusted salaries in the middle of the year. Previously, I know that we have, gone less than what the Boston numbers have been on at least one occasion. I think it's two, but I guess personally, I don't have a real, issue with it. And as the part of the exec board, I kind of agreed to go along with it. So I still feel that way.
Thank you, Alan. Paul Stabler.
Yeah, I just want to speak in support of it. I believe it's important we support our employees, at this time. They really did a great job during the pandemic responding to very unusual and stressful situations. And I think this is a good way that we can do that. I understand Tim's concerns. Certainly, I don't take them lightly, but I am speaking in favor of it. So I do agree. And yes, Alan, I don't think we've ever done a mid-course correction, but we did a couple of years during the Great Recession, go less than the CPI because we were concerned about budgets. So, but at this point, it looks like our budget is solid, and I support the executive director's decision here.
Thank you, Paul. Other responses from board members, either in support of Tim's concerns or in support of what Sarah has proposed? Lee.
Yeah, I also supported this at the executive board meeting. And to Tim's point, as far as municipalities giving increases like that, as far as, say, use the city of Burlington as an example, our COLAs and step increases are based off of our union contract negotiations. So we're limited to following that, which our contract will be ending in June. So I imagine, you know, during the renegotiation process that those will come into play. As well as here at the city of Burlington, you know, we talked of attracting and retaining employees. We're having a hard time finding recycle truck drivers, water distribution technicians. So we actually reclassified our recycling truck driver job description to increase that pay to try to attract more people, and also have instituted sign-on bonuses. So while we're not doing it through contracts and COLAs, we are having to make adjustments just to attract and retain employees. So, you know, I'm not sure the ratio of truck drivers. I know you guys have truck drivers for roll-offs, and other, you know, companies are seeing the shortages and offering more money. So while benefits are attractive, when it comes down to it, what some employees see on their paycheck at the end of the week is kind of the driver. You know, it's been my experience working in construction and those types of services throughout the years, that what's on that paycheck, unfortunately, is what drives them, and not so much some of the added bonuses. But that's the day and age we're living in right now. So
Thank you, Lee. Katie. I'm sorry, I didn't mind to cut you off, Lee. Katie.
So just to, you know, bounce off what Lee said, I fully support this, Sarah and Paul. I worked at CSWD. I know what it's like as staff, so I fully support this. And it is a tough job market out there for employers. You want to take care of your employees because, like Lee said, if you're looking for a job, you have the pick of industry, pay, benefits, hours. If you have a good staff, do what you can to hold on to them, and CSWD has a great staff. So we're not struggling budget wise. So I absolutely think this is a great idea, and support and take care of the people that make CSWD run. So I fully support it. That's all.
Thanks, Katie. Other commissioners, I know Tim wants to follow up, but just give other commissioners the chance to make their first statement. I'm not seeing any, so Tim, please go ahead.
So I'm just following up on my question. We've got 14 board members. We've got 6 staff members, I think 2 members of the public. We've got 0 examples of emergency COLA increases among this group of 20 plus people. I guess I just, underscore, yeah, we have a great staff and we also have fantastic benefits. And yes, we need to be competitive, and I feel that we are. And I just have got to raise it to the attention of the board that we are positioning ourselves to go forward requesting potentially a bond issue in the near future. And I'm worried that we really come across as tone deaf to our constituents. And that, yes, we need to look out for staff, but we also represent our constituents more importantly. And that's all I got to say.
Thanks, Tim. I can speak to your question, but would have to confess that I'm retired and I'm not privy to what other municipalities are doing, but I do follow the news very closely. And pick your reputable news source, and they're talking. There's a lot of reports about how companies are reconfiguring or re-examining their pay scales and making adjustments, both in response, I think, to high inflation and the extremely low unemployment rate. My view is that this is a compassionate proposal that Sarah has put forth. She's just offered justification. She has explained its affordability, certainly in this fiscal year, that money is available. When I first heard about it, she had suggested more explicitly in perhaps if we did 3% now, that come July, when we normally would implement a cost of living adjustment, which could be as high as 6%, that COLA in July might be less. Depending on what that COLA number could be, and I would argue that it would not be another 3%, but something a bit less than that, that over time, the benefit that staff gets by 6 months of earlier compensation can be offset and balanced by a somewhat lower second COLA applied in July, and that it can actually be a beneficial approach that helps both staff now and doesn't adversely affect the district's finances down the road. Can run some numbers to demonstrate that. I don't think this is the place to do that, but that's my sense, that this is something that can be characterized as perhaps not win-win for everybody, but on balance can be a net zero and benefits everybody. That's my sense. Logan.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that, to my colleague's point around going to bond and how press can come around for bond issues, like this seems like a prudent measure, not only for our staff who work very hard and serve our communities, but also for just showing good faith for the district in supporting members of our community who work and support our communities as well. So I don't know that people are just going to pay attention to numbers when it comes to bond issues, but also to the feel of how this organization takes care of its staff and is a member of the communities and reflects those values of helping each other out and taking care of each other during really trying and difficult times.
Thanks, Logan. Other board members wish to speak to the issue? Again, has been pointed out that no board action is required here, but I think Sarah recognized that this is an important action that she's taking, and that she should be doing it with the full knowledge of the board and trusting that at least the majority of the board would be in support of it. So I appreciate Sarah bringing it to us and having this vetted both at the exec board meeting and then here tonight. Seeing no one else wishing to comment on it, I'm ready to have us move on to then item number 5, the FY20 audit review. I'll turn that over to Sarah, or perhaps Nola if she's on the call.
Yes, Nola is on the call, and I will turn this over to Nola. She's been neck deep in this practically since she got here, actually definitely since she got here, and knows the ins and outs pretty intimately. So Nola, if you would mind.
Before Nola speaks, I'd just like to acknowledge, welcome back, Nola, from a maternity leave. Congratulations with a new young son. And we should all recognize that she's not keeping regular hours,
right.
Being sleep disturbed, if not deprived. But congratulations, Nola.
And you're
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of getting myself prepared here. Give me just one moment. There you go.
doing the handoff.
And for the board information, we are now on page 19 of the board packet.
Okay, so I don't know if you want me to go through and review the audit, or if there are just specific questions that we want to discuss. There was nothing of material that was concerning to the auditors. So that's, really the primary goal is to confirm that there's nothing significant that we should be concerned about. We do seem to be in a good, steady position. There's no ongoing concern that there'll be any failure of the district at this time. We did have to note the impending settlement. So you will see a note, looks like sort of near the end, I believe. Page. It's page 24 of their report, page 26 if you're looking at it electronically. And that they just mentioned that there's a settlement that is a subsequent event. There was one notation regarding our internal controls. So we did have to respond to that. And you can see that I submitted a response to some material weaknesses that they noticed. And we are in the process of making sure that those are cleaned up. Unfortunately, this may be noted again for fiscal year 21 because we didn't receive this report until quite late in the year. So we didn't have an opportunity to make any changes for fiscal year 21, but it will be cleaned up for fiscal year 22. Is there anything specific that anyone has questions on that I could answer?
Leslie, would you have any questions as the chair of the Finance Committee or observations?
For personal reasons, I really have not been able to review this, but I would say at this time, I am concerned about the time lag between an audit coming to the board and the fiscal year to which it refers. I mean, if there's any way to close that gap, we really need to do this. This becomes meaningless, when you're 18 months, 2 years out. So that would be my concern at this point in time.
Absolutely, yeah,
you know.
and this is certainly an anomaly. We've never had this amount of time lapse between the close of the year, the audit, and then the report of the previous fiscal year's audit to the board. The board may recall that just as this fiscal year's ending and fiscal year 19 also was involved in this, we very suddenly lost our finance director. Didn't pass away, but left the district. So that threw quite a bit of turmoil into both fiscal 19 and then fiscal 20's report. So the result is good news, that it is completed, that there were no significant findings. And yes, so we are currently in the midst of the fiscal 21 audit. So the auditors will be on site next week. So we are back at kind of what we see as a closer to normal schedule. Ideally, we like to get the auditors in October, November. But Leo Ritchie made his appearance in early November. So we had a little bit of a delay there, but not significant. So we are anticipating that this process will get us back into our normal routine. And then the audit for this year will proceed as we have in the past. We're getting them in September, October, probably October, which gets us back in the normal schedule. So this one, highly unusual and will not be repeated.
I just wanted to ask a clarifying question again, and just to bring focus on it, that this audit again covered a period where we had some change in our management. And so I just want to be clear, if you can assure us that the auditors have reviewed that period and that we as a board and the whole community can be satisfied that our finances were adequately managed and represented during this time.
Yes, exactly right. And it really was the result of that in very quick transition. Within less than a year, CSWD had 3 finance directors, and that is also highly unusual. So we are thrilled to have some stability now in that position. And again, like I said, getting back to our normal routine of the auditing schedule. So this is unusual. But again, the bottom line is that the finances are sound.
Any other commissioner questions or comments? I had one more question, and that deals with the drop-off center, the identified deficiency, which is not unfamiliar to me, that there's cash being handled and that they felt that this was, that our controls, I guess, were inadequate. One observation, I believe, just to make, you do have cameras within the booths to keep an eye on transactions. But you're aware of this problem, and my follow-up question really is, what's the status of taking credit card payments at a drop-off center booth?
Yes, so I know I've been promising this for many years, but truly exciting news is that, and John is not on the call yet, but Josh is, and can speak to it, that part of the issue was in getting the secure line down the roads, literally down all the way down to the end of Redmond Road. And then in Essex, there was some concern, and there's always been spotty internet service there. And you want to have, for PCI compliance, you want to have a very secure connection. You don't want to be in the middle of a transaction, lose your internet connection, and then have potential for issues with that transaction. So we have now completed the line down Redmond Road, and they will be completing the line into Essex within the next 3 months. So within this fiscal year, we'll be able to do a more comprehensive rollout. We are taking them in Heinsberg. Williston would be next, and then we'll be rolling them out. Josh, I don't know if you have any more details on a tighter timeline, but that was the latest update that I received from John the other day.
Yep, that's accurate. Williston is the next on the docket to get out. We considered rolling them all out at once, but because of the connectivity issues that you had mentioned, no sense in waiting. Wilson's our busiest site at this point, so we're gonna get something in here sooner than later. I'm hoping by the end of January. That's aggressive. Don't quote me on that, but that's the goal. We'd love to get that, but we just also want to get it in, probably do a soft rollout so that we can make sure that it works, so people aren't showing up with credit cards and no cash, and we don't have any hiccups. So we'll flesh that out more, but again, that's the goal. But we want to make sure everything connects properly.
Thanks, Josh. Katie.
Hi. Okay. So I don't know if this is still happening, but when they put the cameras in at the drop-off centers, we made a policy, and this was partly because of the audit and the cash changing hands at the drop-off centers, that someone, being me, enforcement at the time, would, unbeknownst to whoever's working, would take 15 minutes of random samplings of watching the camera without having to look at anything specific. So it kind of let everybody know that there are random audits of the feed going on. In other words, so like, don't be standing there. We're potentially watching you on the cameras, which is a deterrent and something that the auditors brought up several years ago when those cameras did go in. So there is that, practice that was happening. I'm sure in still some capacity, it's still, going on, but that was something that was recommended for the purpose of people handling all of that cash. So thought I mentioned that.
Thank you, Katie.
Any other comments, questions, or discussion on the auditor's report? No. I'm seeing none, so thank you very much, Nola, for the update on that, and best of luck working on the next year's audit.
Thank you.
Or the next audit that you're working on. I'm ready to move on then to item number 6, the MRF timeline review, which begins on page 50 of your meeting booklet. And it would either be Josh or Sarah, I believe, that might kick off this review.
Yep, I'm going to turn the PowerPoint piece over to Josh, but there also is a memo on page 49 of the packet that just provides, again, a brief history, very, very brief history of some of the conversations that we've had to date for over the past 3 years regarding the materials recovery facility. So just a slight recap. And again, the information is available for our newer members. If you want to have a fuller picture, we can certainly get you those minutes of the meetings. But we just want to point out certainly a little bit of the background, but also what you can expect to see in next month's meeting. Those last 5 bullets are the scenarios that we've been working with SES engineers on providing as far as the cost benefit analysis, and that's coming next month. So Josh, if you want to kick off the timeline review writ large.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, to deliberately point out how we got here and how this timeline was developed, that we are working off of board direction and interaction for about 3.5 years of discussion and analysis. And, our concepts we're working that are pushing us forward are CSWD wants to continue to own a materials recovery facility, which we own currently for all of our new members. We recognize that our existing facility may not be adequate or will not be adequate for the next 25 years. We're looking into the future. We're looking at the long term here. And that we should identify costs for a new facility and develop a plan for a board approval, which the timeline kind of lays out the steps that we're putting forward to kind of get to that board approval, to get everybody comfortable with the ideas that we're going to present. So just want to make sure that's, that's how we got here. All right, I will now bring up the PowerPoint, and there's a slight change to this PowerPoint. We are not presenting our cost benefit analysis.
Josh,
Okay.
I can share.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So again, walking us through the timeline. This is for new board members. I will be brief, not to bore everybody. But in 2018, we brought to our board the state of the MRF. We showed limitations and opportunities. Staff had been out looking at the most recent recycling technologies out there. We really kind of presented like what was the state of recycling in 2018, because we were working through a recycling crisis. And what our opportunities were moving forward for the next 25 to 30 years. We had a retreat. We toured our facility and kind of pointed out the areas that we could see improvement and opportunities. And that's where we asked the key questions that I just went over. And that the board's direction was, yeah, we definitely want to own a new MRF, but you don't have a blank check to go for it. Come back to us and, let us know what your analysis process is, what your siting criteria is, tell us how we're going to get there. So we went into future siting. We started with 30 potential sites. We whittled it down to 5. We had a siting criteria that we presented to the board. It was 3 tiers. We further got that down to 2. We looked at Redmond Road, which is property that we own. It's near kind of what we call our main campus, because that's where our largest drop-off center is, and it's also where our organics diversion facility is. And we looked at a property off of Route 116 in South Burlington. We did a wetlands analysis on both. We spoke with the cities on both, and it kind of came down to Redmond Road on the property that we owned was the most viable site because it had the most land, and we owned it. So that reduced costs moving forward for investment purposes. We brought the board a refresher in 2020, and then COVID hit. So we got everything, got our stuff back together, and by June of 2021, we went over kind of a conceptual review, and part of that conceptual review was to develop this time frame that I'm presenting now. So today, this meeting, this month, in December of 2021, we plan to release a processing equipment RFP, and that would be a design build. There's 5 major MRF providers out there that develop and design equipment. We've actually spoken with all 5. We visited all 5 sites and seen the technologies they have to offer. We will release the RFP to develop a facility for us. Now, this is not approval to build it or to pay for the equipment. This is just the design process to get us a more accurate cost estimate of what it would take for us to develop and integrate a newer system. I just want to point out the next steps are all proposed. They're all conditional, but it's kind of the path that we could lay out to kind of give us an organized idea of how to move forward. So in January, we will present a cost benefit analysis. It will be presented by SES engineers. There's 5 options in that, and the memo went over those 5 options. We covered the do nothing, retrofit in place, and then a greenfield build on the site we identified on Redmond Road. And then in that, we looked at 3 potential annual tonnage inbound amounts to kind of cover what we would expect for materials we would process, which would then define the system size and the footprint requirement. And then also in January, the plan is to release a civil site development and building construction design bid build. And that's a contingent RFP. So what that will be is we will ask design companies that build on the scale that we're requesting. They will develop in tandem with the MRF equipment providers a space to house our MRF equipment. And then when we get to kind of a final design phase, we're requesting a cost estimate, an engineer's estimate, to really kind of hone in what we think the true costs of building a MRF would be. And then this particular RFP would also require that whoever wins the bid would help us bid out the construction and then do construction oversight management. In February, we'd ask for a response to the cost benefit analysis, and then we would present a revenue sufficiency report, and that would be a 10-year assessment, and that would also incorporate a financial management plan as well, based on the revenue sufficiency alternative that made the most sense, which is recommended. So kind of the concept is in January to review 5 potential options with the board of what the future path of the MRF will look like. And then upon that, in February, really dig deep into the details of what the financials will be for those 5 alternatives to come up with the alternative that best fits the district's needs. And in that February meeting, what's highlighted here is really the board decision to proceed with the project at a not to exceed amount. So what the revenue sufficiency report will identify is that there will be, in my opinion, and I'm expecting this, one clear path forward, and that will have a not to exceed cost amount. So the costs are based on our design builds and our sizing requirements for our equipment. And that's what we'll kind of lay out to the board members to say, all of our financial analysis says that we can do this. It's feasible at this amount. We're going to move forward based on the RFPs that we released to come back with a more honed and refined amount. So we're being conservative in our economic analysis. Does that make sense? Okay, haven't heard anything yet. In March, the plan is to select a MRF processing equipment provider. April, to work with that provider for design work, for material flow at our facility, process design and technology recommendations. In April, we also select a civil site development and building construction provider. And that's when we kind of start doing our ONC outreach. ONC is outreach and communications. We really want to kind of start developing a plan based on what we've brought together on what we're thinking the facility will look like. In May of 2022, we're going to have the equipment provider and the site development firm work together hand in hand to develop a site. And the idea would be that the equipment providers say, I need this kind of footprint to make this work. And then the designers would develop that for us. We've put in June for that process to continue. In July, the site development firm will get us construction documents and an engineer's cost estimate. And that would be probably the most accurate estimate we will have prior to going to actual bid. And then the MRF equipment provider would give us a design build document and final cost. And that, again, everything would be bond dependent because we know this is going to be expensive. But at that point, that would be a relatively accurate cost of what the equipment will be. And in our current investigation, the equipment will cost more than developing the site. So this one is an important one to really hone in because that will give us an accurate idea. ONC outreach to continue.
Josh, what is ONC?
Yep.
ONC is defined as?
Outreach and communication. So that's Jen and Michelle, Elise, John, the whole gang. really working up a campaign for our bond. In August of 22, the construction bid selection would come back. It would be bond dependent and board dependent. So at that point, we will have an accurate idea of what the equipment will cost. We will have an accurate idea of what the construction will cost. And that's our board approval point. So if our financial analysis in February says we're not to exceed a $22 million expense, and it comes back in August under $22 million, I would expect board would be comfortable moving forward. It would be a decision process. We would need a vote at that point to say, yes, go ahead with this. Again, it's still bond dependent. September, ONC outreach, bond preparation. October, ONC outreach, bond preparation. November, same, we're going for the bond. Again, this is all conditional. If we receive approval, we'll move forward. We'll submit our permitting. December through March, we will finalize our permitting. April, or as soon as as soon as our permits come in and construction's viable, we would break ground. We've given a good chunk of time for site development and building construction. Once the actual shell of the building is up, that's when the equipment providers can come in and start installing equipment. The estimate would be December through April of 2024. May of 24, equipment testing. June of 24, we'd start transferring tons from our old MRF or existing MRF to our new MRF. July of 24, official opening of the new MRF, decommission old MRF. Again, this is preliminary. This is extremely aggressive, but I think the path forward is there. It's contingent on a lot of presentations to the board and contingent on board decision.
Thanks, Josh. Can we return back just the full regular screen? Be ready to pull this up again if there are commissioners who have questions on particular items. But
all right.
Thanks. Sarah, did you want to add anything to the presentation at this point, or shall we open it up for board discussion?
I think we open it up.
Okay. Board members would like to go first.
Doug?
Doug. You're muted, Doug.
When's your contract up with Casella?
The current operating contract is up at the end of June.
And we're currently in conversation with them to extend that to meet this timeline with a potential extension of 1 year beyond this timeline and a potential extension of 1 year beyond that. That's so just in case.
Yeah, those details will be, we'll be meeting with them after the holidays. There's been some initial work done with by Josh and a rep from Casella. And then we will bring the decisions, obviously it goes through Thomas, they'll do their drafting. And then we'll bring that back to the board early before June.
Can I ask a question? Just to back up, and I don't want to back up too much because I know there was a lot of history, but can you guys is the location of the MRF where it is now, is that significant to a lot of haulers? Do they like to, is the MRF right next to where they take the trash? That kind of thing?
It is, but the trash and the recycling is generally not in the same vehicle. So it's completely different routes.
So my small hauler does split his vehicle. Is that unusual?
It is unusual.
He may have to adapt and just take 2 trips, or just make his trucks, set them up different way if we move them. Or can he, or is the new location at Redmond Road, could he also be taking his trash near there?
No. So, but the new location, Redmond Road is not very far from where the MRF is right now on Industrial. It's a 10-minute drive.
Okay.
It's a little under 3 miles, and that was one of the siting criteria requirements, is that we didn't want to move the MRF too far away from population density or the center of the county, which is kind of how we settled on our Redmond Road location. We didn't want it too far from his existing site. And also, the traffic is already in mean, it's already happening. So we're not really shifting, or we're not increasing traffic in a town. We're just kind of shifting where it is.
Okay, thanks.
I would like, I don't want to jump in before other commissioners. I had a couple of clarifying questions. But one, just to reinforce, Josh, my sense is you're an optimistic guy, and you've outlined an aggressive but optimistic plan, but recognizing that there might be some speed bumps along the way that we'll want to slow the process down, perhaps even a little bit, and have an opportunity to ask our questions and look deeply at the numbers, the finances. And as you acknowledged, those numbers were intended to be here. The start of the process was to have a presentation tonight. That's being pushed back to January. I just wanted to go back to your timeline and clarify. And as I try to pull it up, it's January 2022. January of 2022, we'll have a presentation by the engineers, and I believe will also be presented with the cost benefit analysis. And then you've built in February 2022 response to any cost benefit analysis questions. My take on this is that this will allow the board members time to review this and pose questions either at the January meeting or perhaps after that, pose them to staff, and then have an opportunity for full airing and exposure of board questions to the cost benefit analysis. And I just want to make sure that we're all aware there's time baked in here that we can ask our questions and be satisfied that you've done the work that we expect you to do.
That is absolutely correct.
Thank you. And I just want to reassure the board members also that, you know, there's going to be some homework and work to be done, but you'll have an opportunity to have it fully explored and at a board meeting. I thought, well, I see Kelton's got his hand up, and then Leslie.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kelton.
So I would just ask, I know we're supposed to see it this meeting. Is there a way that if we're most likely getting it soon, we could see it when you get it so that we have more than enough time to review it before that January meeting? Like, are they going to be completing that soon where we could see it the next few weeks here before the meeting?
Yeah, so the delay was, it was a misunderstanding. The model is complete, but the narrative portion describing the assumptions and what went into the model and the rationale for the recommendations, that was not complete. So yeah, I do think that there would be time ahead. Certainly, you know, we could also, because this month's meeting is a week ahead of normal. It kind of crunched the timeline a little bit. Certainly with next month's meeting being the very last week of January, there's more than enough time to actually get the entire packet out, you know, at least a week in advance. So I think the entire packet can go earlier because I think there will be several items that will need some good reading time in January. So we can make our aim to get the packet out even a little bit earlier than we normally would. So normally we would send out the packet on a Thursday before a Wednesday meeting. We can aim to make that earlier in that week. So you have a couple of extra days to take a look at everything. A good idea. Thank you, Kelton.
Thank you.
Leslie, you're next, and then Ron.
Thanks. So in all these kinds of undertakings, those assumptions are the critical control points. And what I don't understand is how what you're calling the revenue sufficiency analysis comes after the cost benefit analysis. And I'm not understanding that sequence. And I would think that in providing the board the narrative about assumptions, there have to be assumptions about the revenue flows. So that's why when I see that in February, it's confusing. Could you clarify that?
Yeah, it was the recommendation actually of the consultant to go in this order. So we want to get the assumptions as far as as Josh mentioned, inbound, quantity, size first. And then once we kind of landed on, okay, which is kind of the preferred one or two scenarios, and I think we can do the revenue sufficiency on each of them. Then once we've landed on those assumptions as far as the quantity, then you'll know, what other assumptions you wanted to plug into the revenue sufficiency. But the order was the recommendation of the consultant. Josh, I don't know if you have anything.
Oh, so just if I may follow up.
Sure, sure.
So what are going to be the elements of what you're calling a cost benefit analysis? Is just going to be some kind of physical measures, or, I mean, surely there'll be dollars somehow in there. Those dollars derive from assumptions about revenues and costs. It's still not clear to me how this is working, what the logic of the model is.
Well, and that's why we wanted to have the narrative accompany the presentation, so that could be all laid out, so that there would be hopefully no confusion. Josh, do you have anything to add or address better Leslie's question?
Not it'll dive into a ton of details if I start talking too much. So I'd say it was, we kind of hashed this out exactly as Sarah had said, that the recommendation of the consultant was to do a cost benefit analysis over a 30-year period under these scenarios, with kind of with an idea of what we're doing, and then comparing those all to each other, and then showing the results of that would then identify the most, or at least the top viable options over a 30-year period. But the revenue sufficiency would get into the details, and we could adjust, certain criteria and assumptions based on the details, which would then give us more of a honed idea of what it would truly look like over a 10-year period. And again, Leslie, without really jumping into a ton of the nitty-gritty details, that's kind of was the approach, is to give a direction of 5 options, and then with those 5 options really dig in farther and give a revenue sufficiency on those options over a 10-year basis. That's the way that it was laid out to us by our consultant. So yes, the cost benefit does have a lot of financial inputs. Maybe that's the question you're asking.
I think I'm just going to have to see what it is.
Yeah.
Now, all sounds, to me, it sounds muddled. So I'm sorry, but I'll have to wait and see.
Ron.
I have, I guess, what would be considered a new kid question about bond dependency. Is it correct to understand that a bond issue requires a vote from all of the community members of the district? Now, if that's true, what happens if some of the district members vote no? What's the ratio before it can go ahead?
You do a lot of bond work as one of the bond bank's recommended bond attorneys. Could you speak to Ron's question? I think you're still there.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. So the vote is on a district-wide basis. It can be turned down in one by voters in one community, but you look at the district as a whole. So that's a difference. It's all members of Chittenden Solid Waste get to vote on this. The polling places are in each community, but the vote is a total vote from all residents and voters within Chittenden Solid Waste District.
I just wanted to jump in for the newer board members, clarify. Thomas is our town, is the district council, and that's what he's weighing in. On a follow-up question, what is the what percentage of the voters have to vote in favor of it for the bond to be approved?
It's a majority vote.
50%, 50 plus one.
50% plus one, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions and comments at this point? Tim.
So if I'm, the original schedule had the cost benefit analysis being delivered today and the revenue sufficiency model being delivered in January and then a vote in February. And now if I understand correctly, what we're saying is we're going to get both the cost benefit analysis and the revenue sufficiency model in January, but we're not moving the voting back.
The shift is that the cost benefit is in January and the revenue sufficiency is in February. The previous, had we been able to present it today, we would have had February for more deliberation. It would have been December was cost benefit and January was revenue sufficiency and February was deliberation into a board decision.
So we're going to vote and then we're going to see the revenue sufficiency portion of the model.
No, the idea is to set the agenda so that you see the revenue. The agenda, in my opinion, would look like response to any cost benefit analysis questions, then discuss the revenue sufficiency analysis, go into detail on that. Our consultant will be at both of those, the January and the February meeting. And based on, sufficient presentation and, adequate discussion and answering of questions, if the board felt comfortable to move into a decision, that would be the time to do it because the information has been presented as a whole.
I just want to jump in and say I take this as a proposed timeline as the board chair. If my sense is that the board's not ready to make a decision in February, then we'll postpone it. I think Josh is laying out an aggressive time frame. If we are to deliver this information and have a bond vote in November of 2022, but don't take it as a given that we are definitely voting to approve in February 2022. That's the goal, to have a vote, whether it's in the affirmative or not.
When will we receive the revenue sufficiency model?
It's scheduled at this point for February. That's when we have it on our timeline to review.
Okay, but I'm not sure if you understand my concern. You're laying out a month, but then does that mean we're going to get it one day before the board meeting or 1 hour or, 4 weeks?
Certainly not 1 hour. We would not do that to the board, and certainly not 1 day. We would not do that to the board. The revenue sufficiency report would be available with the regular packet. If we can bump that delivery of that packet, that information up by several days, we will do so. And we want to give the board, it's no less than its normal time for packet reading, which is now, like I said, we send it out. The aim is on Thursday for a Wednesday meeting. If I can move it up a few days before that, I certainly will.
I think it's important for us not to prejudge what we're going to be presented with. We need to allow the time frame to play itself out. As Leslie said, she's going to have to wait and see. She's got her questions. They're good questions, but I think we also have to trust that the process will flow through. And if it's inadequate and the time frame is rushed, then the board will not take action as is proposed here. But I think it's important for us not to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Is the cost benefit, so the way I understand it, there's a cost benefit analysis and a revenue sufficiency model, and there are narratives to support both?
We definitely want narratives to support both. Not everyone is comfortable just reading and gaining information off of a spreadsheet. So I want to make sure that, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Are both the cost benefit model and the revenue sufficiency model complete at this point?
No, we have not done the revenue sufficiency. That was not scheduled for this time frame.
And the cost benefit analysis is going to be that will be presented to us when?
Again, as Josh laid out the timeline, January.
I guess I'm not understanding why, if it's already completed, if it's not, it's a work product that was paid for by the district, and, why isn't it just made publicly available on the website?
Yeah, as I explained earlier, I wanted a narrative to accompany. Again, not everyone is comfortable reading and gaining information and nuance and context from a spreadsheet. Some people need to have an explanation in narrative form. And I don't want to presume that every member of this board or every member of the public or every member of my staff can get what they need to get or what we need them to get out of a spreadsheet. I want there to be, have access to the information no matter how someone learns or takes in that information. And that over time has said to me, there needs to be a narrative accompaniment. So that was the source of the misunderstanding and why you don't have that tonight. But the model is complete and we need to bring forth that narrative explanation.
I would also say, I think it's important that when the information comes out, that it's presented to everyone on the board at the same time. I think that's the most efficient and fair way to move this process along, and not have characterized perhaps sneak peeks at some of this information when it's not fully ready for the full board. Allow staff and Sarah to have the time they need to get this material prepared and presented to us.
It is complex and not terribly complicated, but complex. So I just want to make sure that everything is as clear as possible and accessible to all ways of interpreting and taking in information. Paul, there were a couple of questions in the chat. Tom had asked, about the ballots and not being combined before counting, each municipality responsible for counting. So there are several different ways that we can approach a bond. We can do a standalone bond initiative. That is the most expensive way to do that. We do need to go through the municipal clerks. So we could have a special election, but we pay the full brunt of that, the cost for that. We could go through a general election where there are already ballots being printed and there's generally greater participation. So we could add our bond initiative onto that process. Or we could work through town meeting day, which doesn't have as much participation generally, but that is another option. So because we have a general coming up, that's really the drive behind the push to November is the greatest participation, the greatest amount of people having the opportunity to vote, and to have it be in conjunction with an already scheduled election process. And Liz is saying that she appreciates having both the spreadsheet and the narrative. And the deadline to get the info also from Liz on a general election bond vote. Thomas, you again work on these regularly. With early voting, I'm guessing that we need to have that this summer if we are going to proceed with a general in November.
That's correct. A lot of the town clerks are automatically mailing out mail-in ballots to their voters, and so that requires greater than the normal 30 days in advance of a meeting, which 30 to 40 days was generally the time frame by which you had to post your warning, get the ballot posted, and then time to prepare the ballots for the election day. In this case, as I said, most communities are mailing out absentee ballots, and so we need to coordinate with the clerks in each member municipality because they run the election, but it's a separate ballot, a district-wide ballot that will essentially be the same in every community.
I just wanted to offer a clarifying point here. We've just gone over the financials. We do not have that dollars and cents information yet, but I think it's important for the board to understand that the intent when this bond issue comes forward is to demonstrate to the voters that this will not impact any property taxpayers' property tax bill, that this will be net zero impact on property taxes. I would leave it at that, but that's just, I think it's important for the board to understand that that's the direction that Sarah is intending to take this.
That's right. That is a key assumption that is going to be worked into the revenue sufficiency model.
Ron, your hand is up.
Yeah, Paul, I appreciate that comment, particularly in light of the fact that, in my own community of Winooski, since we've had a couple of really big bond issues here in the last couple of years, a large dollar figure is likely to cause a lot of dismay. And I think it's really important that there's an educational planning to make sure that people understand what the impact is going to be. And as you suggest, a zero impact. Really, really important to do that educational thing fairly well in advance of the bond vote.
Absolutely. And that's why we have built in, should the board agree to proceed, we have built in, in April, starting that outreach and communication effort.
Alan, your hand is up. You're muted.
I would also recommend that staff contact the Champlain Water District once we get into that process, because they have gone through the bonding vote and approval process for very similar kind of projects over the last 25 years, and have made out very, very well. So I just think we need to, do some back of house kind of stuff on what they've done to get their votes approved.
Yeah, if there's no need to reinvent the wheel,
Right.
I'm not going to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
The district will also be required, just in terms of the public interaction, is required to hold a public hearing, within a short time frame right before the vote. So that'll be another opportunity to have the public participate and the district be able to respond to any questions.
The district exposure through the media, I'm aware of it. There's been a lot in recent months. Kudos to Michelle. Sarah, you're coming up with some more presentations. For those who access these media outlets, there's good information coming along that will help lay the groundwork. Other comments, discussion on this MRF timeline? Hearing none, I'm ready to move us on then to, I believe there is no executive session tonight. We can move on then to item number 8, other business. Sarah, did you want to give us an update on anything?
I did forget, I wanted to mention the latest of what's happened with Flynn Avenue. We did have a chance, as I mentioned in my update, my executive director update, to meet with Lee and Chapin. And after that meeting, Josh and Thomas and I realized that it has been quite some time since we've done a wetlands review of that site. I think probably not since we first purchased it, almost 20 years ago, actually, to the day. I just was looking over the deed, and it was recorded on December 17th, 2001. So we want to do an updated wetlands review. So we sent that on to Chapin and Lee, and Lee, you probably haven't had a chance to talk with him about that. But I had requested a 6-month extension. Chapin had requested 3 months from the city council. So I've asked if he could please consider asking for another 3 months from the city council. So we'll wait to see what his response will be from there. But that was a pretty big realization, and wetlands rules have changed in the past 20 years. So we just want to make sure that everything is up to date as far as that assessment.
I believe we're meeting tomorrow again,
Okay.
so we can discuss it tomorrow as well.
Yep.
Thanks for that update, Sarah. Any other business that to be presented to the board tonight? I'm seeing none. Before we officially adjourn, I just want to note that this is our last officially scheduled meeting before the end of the year, before the holidays, and wanted to wish everybody a good holiday, and hopefully you'll be able to spend some good quality time with your loved ones. And we'll reconvene in January.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Paul,
Thank you.
And with that, I think we're ready to entertain a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn, Essex.
Seconded.
Thank you. By unanimous consent. All those in favor, please say to adjournment.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Good night, all. Happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone.
Night. Thanks.
Thanks you as well.
Thank you.
Good night.